everybody. Tommy and Eddie here. We would just like to share some words of wisdom with the graduating class. It seems that a chapter in your life is closing and now a new one opens.
And over the years, there have been so many great graduation speeches. We'd like to just condense those down for you and give you just the great nuggets. These nuggets may have the power to change your life.
Yep, the world may call them cliches. We like to call them words that transcend the human ellipse of time.
No, I just think we'll stick to nuggets of life. I think that's really good.
Mine is so much better. Wait, let's call them life nuggets.
That's basically what I just said.
It's really not. The first one is this. Eat your vegetables. Seems like your mother was right.
Yeah, you'll feel better, you'll go to the restroom more, and that beta-carotene may just save your life. Here's another one. When it comes to praise or criticism from other people, treat it like chewing gum. Chew it, see if there's any truth in there, but don't swallow the gum of praise or criticism.
That's true. Scientists have proven that swallowed criticism or praise will stay in your digestive tract for 7 years.
Here's another one. Wherever you go, there you are.
No, that is just like a cliche that your uncle says at a family reunion.
Okay. What about this? Live, love, and laugh.
Yeah, I saw that one coming a mile away. That is cliche as don't drink, smoke, or chew, or go with girls that do.
Okay. All right. Here's one. When it comes to your future, don't sit there and worry about it. Worrying is like a rocking chair. It'll let you do something for a little bit, but it'll get you nowhere.
Yes, but if that is true, Cracker Barrel's been promoting worry for years. Here's one for you. Dance the paso doble, even if by yourself.
I think they call that the paso single.
Oh, good to know.
Here's something. When people ask you, so what do you want to be when you grow up? Don't fret if you don't know the answer. There's a lot of 30-year-olds that don't have the answer to that yet.
But don't be that 30-year-old that is still sleeping on their parents' couch.
That is so true. You know what? Go ahead and take out a pen and paper right now and write your parents an IOU.
Yeah, I owe you a couch, preferably one without Cheeto stain.
When you fast forward the tape 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed with the things that you didn't do than the things that you did. So take some chances.
Maybe you could make this your life prayer. God, help my character catch up with your blessings.
And realize nothing in your life has taken God by surprise. It says it in His Word, Proverbs 16, verse 9, that man may make his plans, but God will direct the path.
And listen, God has given you everything you need to be the person He created you to be. So what are you waiting for? Get out there and be who He created you to be.
So go in blessings, go out there with your life, and go in peace. Realize who you belong to and take His story and make history.
And if you don't remember anything else that we told you, please heed this. Eat your vegetables. It's really good for you.
Nuggets of wisdom, or nuggets of life, or whatever they said. What? Life nuggets. That's right. That's what I meant. We are in the graduation season, right? You know what that means? Nuggets of wisdom overload. That's what it means. There's going to be so many different commencement speakers saying super important things to all of our graduates and everyone who's there. I mean, if you're like me, you get to go to at least one, maybe 2 or 3, or maybe you've already been to a couple graduation ceremonies, and you get these great privileges of hearing these great addresses, right? And it doesn't end there for the graduates. The graduates also get extra doses of wisdom in their cards, their emails, the Facebook posts, all sorts of different ways of communicating nowadays, maybe even face-to-face, communicating wisdom. And is that a bad thing? Well, no, we love it, actually. It shows that we care. It shows that we're interested, that these great pieces of wisdom is something that we want to portray to our graduates and to everyone else, right? But the problem is we get so much advice all at once that it's just impossible to really grab hold of what's being said and put it into our lives. There's just too much going on in life. And, I mean, you don't even have to be a graduate to figure that out. There's just so much advice going on in life, isn't there? And honestly, is all this great wisdom important? You ever thought about that question? How important is our thinking? How important is our view of the world? How important is our plan moving forward in life? Do we have to have a plan moving forward? I mean, What's so important about this, and why does it even matter what we fill our minds with? Maybe a better question is there a simple way to filter through all these truth statements that just seem to be bombarding us to figure out which ones we should keep and which ones we should discard? Well, we're actually going to get to that this morning. The last few weeks we've been journeying through this conversation about our soul activity. What is our primary soul activity, and what's the most important thing that we should be doing with God? And we've kind of arrived at this passage from Mark 12, and it's in a few different places, but we've picked Mark 12 for our verse, talking about how Jesus said the most important commandment is to love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And we've kind of been working through that, hashing through that. We've looked at practically, specifically, how in the world do we live loving God with all of our heart? How do we live out loving God with all of our soul? And so this morning we're actually on the mind. How do we, practically speaking, very specifically speaking, how do we love God with all of our mind? It's an interesting question. How do we do that? I mean, it's easy to say it. We've heard it before. But how do we do it? And what a great topic for Graduation Sunday. I mean, who organizes this? It certainly wasn't me. There's something that happens with graduation. Something where we are taking these steps to embark on this new journey in life. Life from out of our little nest, right? Out from under the wings of our parents or our grandparents or our guardians, whoever's been taking care of us. So far in life, we've kind of assumed all the truths that have been given to us, that they are all true, and we, from this point on, we get to decide what's true for us. And I'm not trying to say that what we've been told is wrong. There's just something unique. There's this opportunity where we actually get to take ownership of the truth, our own truth, right? I mean, it's just an important moment in life, really. And so it is with our Christian walk. When you really think about our journey with God, at the point that we receive Christ, by that time, we've already been on some type of journey through life, right? We've been already experiencing some things. We've had so many truths, supposed truths, that have already been kind of pushed at us, bombarded. In some ways, we've had this information almost ingrained in us, this view of the world, and we just have accepted that truth. I mean, why wouldn't we, right? But if we really wanted to process through all the information that we've already received, how do we do that? It just seems overwhelming, doesn't it? I mean, think about all the information that we have received from the world. I mean, the world's philosophy is pretty simple, isn't it? If you want something, go get it. Just go get it. Whether it's possessions or power or any of those things that are, those are good things for you to just go get. People are important primarily because of what they can do for me, right? Whatever they can do for me. If they can't do anything for you, then you need to get rid of them, right? I mean, that's kind of the message. It's about me. Public opinion really defines truth. I mean, it's one thing that I keep hearing over and over again. Popularity is more important than God's understanding of things. I mean, as long as you're in the accepted group, you're good. Faith in everyday life is two mutually exclusive things. You can go to church and live any way you want the rest of the week. Live for the moment. Don't be worried about what happens tomorrow, right? Don't concern yourself with any consequences. You are the center of the universe. Don't let anyone push you around. I mean, these are messages that we continually hear all the time. Our world's really concerned about tolerance, right? All religions are the same. The truth is not absolute. What's good for you is good for you. It doesn't matter how it might harm someone else, right? And these messages, they just keep getting pounded into us. How do they get pounded into us? Well, how many hours did you watch television last week? How many movies do you watch in the course of a year? What type of music do you listen to? What magazines, what books, what websites, right? What websites do you read? How much time are you devoting to social networking? Who are your friends? What kind of influences do they have on your life? I mean, there is information, advice coming from all sorts of different angles. Just spend a few minutes on Facebook and you've got everyone's sharing really helpful information from all sorts of different directions, and usually in opposite directions. It's kind of interesting. So many influences in our lives, right? And the many years in your life before you met Christ, you weren't combating that information at all. That was just part of life. It's all good, right? Well, turn with me to Romans chapter 12 this morning. Romans chapter 12. As we embrace this soul activity of loving God with all of our mind. Again, we have this new opportunity to choose truth in our life, to choose our own idea of truth, which a lot of times isn't our own idea of truth, is someone else's idea of truth. Or we have the opportunity to choose the truth, God's idea of truth. This is what's involved in loving God with all of our mind. We're making choices about what we're putting in there, right? We're making choices about which way we are choosing, whether we're going to choose His way, His thinking, or not. Paul in Romans chapter 12, he talks about setting ourselves apart for God's use, and it includes this battle for the mind. It really is a battle, isn't it? Beginning with verse 1, it says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, in view of what God has done for you in Jesus, I urge you to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy," which means being set apart for His use, "and pleasing to God. And this is your true and proper worship." How we live out our lives is really what determines what we are worshiping, right? We've talked about that. Whether we are worshiping God or someone else or something else, living is actually where we find our worship. And then Paul shares the means by which we can get there, by the means by which we can actually set ourselves apart for God. And that's through our mind. Verse 2, it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world," the thought processes that are just so prevalent in our world. "But be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Renewing of your mind. "Then you'll be able to test and approve that what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." So do you see the importance of renewing the mind in this verse? If we don't renew our mind, what happens? Well, we're not able to actually test and approve what God's will is. We don't actually know what He wants from us. We don't know how to love Him. We don't know how to live for Him. We can't live out our soul activity without this renewing of the mind. And what's interesting, as you look at these verses, this word conform, conforming to the pattern of this world, it's actually a passive verb that's being translated here from the Greek. It literally means that we're being molded or stamped according to a pattern, that something is happening to us. It's not something that we're doing ourselves. We're not conforming ourselves. Something else is conforming us. It would be into a mold of some type. And easy way for me to think about it is like a Jell-O mold. If you think about Jell-O in a Jell-O mold, I mean, what effort did it take for the Jell-O to get into that shape? Nothing, really, right? So the conforming our minds to the pattern of this world is very similar. We really don't have to do anything much at all to be conformed to the pattern of this world. All we have to do is go through life and live it. But it also implies that if we're not going to be conformed to the mold of the pattern of this world, that there's going to have to be some action, right? We're actually going to have to live into this intentionally. We're going to have to think about what we're thinking in order for this to happen, right? We're going to have to work at it. And this verse, as this verse goes along, it gives us something else to work at. And this is to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And the word translated transformed is a verb in the present tense. What does that mean for us? If a verb is present tense, it means it's continually acting all the time. It's a continual present tense. So in this case, it's you're being transformed, and it's not an on and off thing as with our relationship with God. It's something that's happening to us continually. It's just happening in a continuous action, always presently working. And the Greek word translated here, transformed, is actually from the root word for our English word metamorphosis. So it's much like a caterpillar that's transforming into a butterfly. So our minds are being transformed. Again, it's present tense, it's continuous, it's happening. And what's also interesting about this transformed words is it's very similar to this conform word that is, again, also a passive verb. It's happening to us. And I would assume it's similar to a caterpillar turning into a butterfly in that way as well, as the caterpillar is not doing the work, it's happening. There's this transformation of mind is happening to us, just like conform would be happening to us. But the key here is this transform word is also an imperative verb. And what that means to us is that we actually have to choose to allow this force to take place in our life. We have an imperative. We get to choose to allow our minds to be transformed. So how do we renew our minds? How do we make that choice? How do we continually choose to allow our minds to be transformed, to be renewed? How do we focus on the truth that comes from God rather than some so-called truth that we're bombarded with day in and day out? How do we do that? We're continually having to choose to allow our minds to be transformed, right? And this really is all about soul activity. It's all about worship. Paul says in Colossians 3:2, we have to keep setting our minds on things above. Verse 2, it says, set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. And again, this is not something that we do necessarily on our own or in our own strength. Isaiah 55:8 says, God speaking, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So it's not something that we can just naturally do in our own strength or in our own wisdom. This is not the thoughts that we have been receiving from the world. This is not a natural process. We have to allow God to participate in our lives in this process of transformation. We have to allow Him to inform us. We have to allow Him to transform us, right? And you know what they call this in Christian circles? It's the practice of confession. Confession. You could also use a few other words, sanctification. But confession really kind of gets down to the nitty-gritty here. And really when we hear the word confession, probably most of us are thinking of maybe a confession booth where we go in and, we're sitting down and there's some type of curtain and you're talking to a priest. I mean, have you seen those in movies probably? And you're saying, Father, forgive me for I've sinned. That is confession, but it's not the full picture of confession. Now, when we hear the word confession again, we tend to think that we're talking about bad things, sins in our life. But confession, again, is much bigger than even that. Confession is agreeing with God about something, whatever it is. Yes, for sins in our lives, but also for good things. When we are confessing to God, we are agreeing with his view on whatever topic that we're thinking about. With sin, we're actually agreeing that whatever we did is sin. We're agreeing with him. We confess it as sin. We confess, we agree with God to his understanding of whatever action we just did, right? That's confessing. I mean, think about a courtroom. If you've been accused of murder, for instance, and you go into the courtroom and you confess that that statement about you is true, that you did murder someone, then you're confessing, right? It's confession. So you can, again, confess much more than your sins. You can agree with God about all sorts of things, good things and bad things. Yes, I agree with you, God, that this is true. Yes, I agree with you, God, that this is not true. And this is very important parts of our Christian life because we're becoming active in our thought processes, saying, yeah, let's look at this, and is this true or not? And not just accept everything as it is, right? And many people actually call this spiritual breathing. You breathe in good stuff. You agree with God that what he says is good, and you accept it into your life. And then what do? You breathe out the bad stuff, right? You agree with God that what he says is bad is actually bad, so you get rid of that. And in the process of doing that with your thoughts, you're renewing your mind. You're actually allowing God to be a part of the process. Now, many people I've talked to, again, speaking of bad things, they really see Christianity as something, it's just a religion of just avoiding stuff. This is bad, this is bad. We're just known as a people who avoid stuff, right? But most of us, I would say, if you're thinking about breathing in or breathing out, most of us need some breathing in. We need to breathe in some of that good stuff. Yeah, we need to avoid some stuff. It's important to agree with God on some of the bad stuff, but how important is it to agree with God, for instance, that we are incredibly made by him? How important is that? How important is it to know that you are a treasure of God? That you're saying, yes, Lord, I agree with you, that is true. I mean, would that be important for us to acknowledge? How important it would be to say, God, I know that you love me and that you value me and that I am somehow worth dying for. I see that as true. I will claim that as true. I mean, how important are those confessions in our life? Anyone here need any types of confessions? I think we all do. So we need to take some time, right? I mean, how do we get this information in? We meditate on God's words. We fill our minds with truth. We're kind of processing through not just the normal things in life, but we're actually having to be pretty intentional about what we're receiving into our minds. And in order for us to break down these patterns, these molds that our minds are already in, they're already there. So we're working pretty hard at this. Our minds need to be renewed. And he renews them as we allow him to work, breathing in the truth, breathing out the junk, holding all of our thoughts captive, as Scripture describes it, evaluating them one by one. Is this true or not true, right? It's important stuff. Remember when I asked earlier, is there a simple way to filter through all these truth statements and try to figure out which ones you should keep, which ones you should get rid of? That's a pretty good way to do it. Well, just look at them one by one and start evaluating by God's word and godly advice around you, and really be considering what's true and what's not. And then believe it, right? As Paul says in Philippians 4:8, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. I mean, we worry so much about avoiding bad stuff that sometimes we don't think about the good stuff, right? Think about such things. Whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice. And then it says, the God of peace will be with you. The God of peace will be with you. When you focus on the perspective of God, on things in life, we actually have an opportunity to experience His peace. It's found in His presence, right? Spending time with Him, allowing His presence to show up in our lives. This is such an important truth for us, such an important part of loving God with all of our mind, focusing on truth. But I do have to give you a warning before we close here. Look at 1 Corinthians 8, 1-3. It says, "We know that we all possess knowledge, but knowledge puffs up while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not yet know as they ought to know, but whoever loves God is known by God." What is that saying? Well, knowledge in and of itself, it can actually be dangerous. It can puff you up, and it might make you feel like you are something and you really aren't, right? It's so important that we have the perspective of God even in how we apply truth in our life. Don't misuse truth. I mean, misusing truth, knowing the truth is great, but misusing the truth when we apply it is not God honoring. It's not God loving at all. You missed the boat. So as we wrap up this morning, I want to just offer you a story tied to that caution that we find in John chapter 8. You can turn with me there if you like. We're going to show it on the screens as well. What's interesting in this story is Jesus has this confrontation with the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, and we know that they were experts in all things God, right? They knew the law of God backwards and forwards. They just knew it. They spent their whole life studying this stuff. And in fact, they knew it so well that they felt like they could come in and create their own rules based on the intentions of God. They thought they knew the intentions of God well enough that of course He would want us to do this. Of course we would want us to do that. Not do this, not do that. And just adding more to the pile, right? Well, listen to this encounter that these law knowers had with Jesus in John chapter 8, beginning in verse 2. It says, "At dawn He appeared again in the temple courts," talking about Jesus, "where all the people gathered around Him, and He sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group, said to Jesus, 'Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commands us to stone such women. Now what do you say?'" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing Jesus. Well, the truth is, in this particular situation, the knowledge, information, the truth of the situation sides with these lawmen. That is what the law of Moses said. Someone caught in adultery, stoned with rocks, right? But what they were about to find out is the truth apparently has some layers to it. You don't just read it and apply it. There's a little more wisdom to it, because the truth ultimately lies in a person. That person being Jesus. And Jesus has such a great, amazing perspective on life and this application of knowledge in any particular situation. I mean, He's just so wise, so much wiser than me, so much wiser than us. And we see in this story, it says Jesus bent down and He started to write on the ground and with His finger. And, we've talked a little bit about this passage and how Jesus may have been maybe posturing Himself near the woman to protect her physically, as she was probably balled up on the ground bawling. We don't know exactly what was going on with Him writing on the ground. It says when they kept on questioning Him, He straightened up and He said to them, "Let any of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Pretty wise answer, right? Again, He stooped down and He wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first. It's funny how the older ones go first. I think they might be a little smarter than the younger ones. Is that true? No? Okay. Anyway, somehow the older ones figured out that they also had sin in their life, and they left. Until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." Now, what's the takeaway from this story? Was Jesus somehow ignoring the law? Was he breaking the rules? Was he ignoring the truth of the situation? I don't think so. He simply just has a lot more understanding of any situation than we do, than they do. Jesus knows the intent of the law. Jesus knows the heart behind the law. He knew the heart of God behind the law, right? And he knew that the heart of the law behind the law, heart of God behind the law was not just about truth, but was also about mercy and grace and love. And this heart of God behind the law also desires to draw all of his creation into right relationship with him. He doesn't desire to push people away. He desires to bring them in. And he also, Jesus, in this situation, knew that each one of the woman's accusers were equally guilty of some sin. So if we were going to start throwing rocks based on who sinned and who didn't, there'd be rocks flying every different direction, wouldn't there? He knew. He knew. So knowing the whole situation, Jesus decided on a path that offered love, then truth. Right? Mercy and grace, then truth. Lovingly protecting her, but also prodding her to leave her life of sin. It's both, right? But making sure that she was with him before he did it. So what's the takeaway from this story? Is it that we should be gurus at reading Scripture and really understand the perfect way to read each Scripture to know exactly what's going on? I would say the takeaway is to make sure you have Jesus in your life. You don't have to become the guru if you've got him with you. He's the one that could share with us what we should do in every situation. So be in the Word, pray, spend time with him. That's our way to be informed. That's our way to know what is true and what's not. How do we handle this situation, and how do we handle that situation? Because the truth is that Jesus simply wants to love us to the truth. He wants to be a part of our lives. And as we've been singing about this morning, he's given us the Holy Spirit to guide us into all truth. He wants us to get there. So as we practice confession in our lives, ultimately we should rely on Jesus to guide us into the application of that truth. As we love God with all of our mind, we should trust him to not only provide the truth, but also maybe even the heart, the reason, the logic behind the truth, so that we might apply it correctly, lovingly, mercifully. We need to be capturing each and every thought and checking them by him. What do you think? What do you think? And then we have to choose to believe it or to not believe it and apply that to our lives. So what do you think? Are you ready to trust God as the truth, for the truth? Are you ready to breathe in the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff? And you know that that's not based on your own understanding, right? That it's good stuff based on his understanding of good stuff, and bad stuff based on his understanding of bad stuff, right? Are we willing to spend some more time in his word? Are we willing to spend some more time in his presence, getting to know his heart about a particular situation? What's God been talking to you about even this morning? Is there some things that you really just need to admit that are true? and some things that you really need to get rid of. Are you ready to make him Lord of your life? I just want to take just a few moments as we close the service to just give you a moment to talk with God. Allow him to search your heart and your mind. And then after a few moments, I'll close this in prayer. Lord God, I am so thankful that we have an opportunity to get away from the busyness of life and really get an opportunity to focus in on you, to spend time in your presence, spend time in your word, spend time worshiping you, recentering our lives back on you. Lord God, would you just give us other times in our week to think about you, to consider who you are, what you've done for us, to celebrate your deeds, to meditate on your love. Lord God, as we get into your word during the week, Lord, I just pray that you would just allow our study of Scripture to be a door into a deeper devotion of you, not just to be a practice of knowledge, but to actually be a time of renewing our minds and our souls and our hearts towards you. Lord, would you just shape our thoughts, even how we live, towards you, towards your ways, towards your thoughts. But Lord, ultimately, would you help us to invest in our relationship with you? You are the truth. And we need you in our lives. Help us to discipline our minds, discipline our thoughts, so that we take each thought captive. Be with us as we go from this place, as we begin again the bombardment of information. Help us to navigate our world, Lord. Bless these people. In Jesus' name, amen. You are sent.